Hello and welcome to Shamrock Rovers Fan TV. Now today I have my match reaction to Shamrock Rovers 2, Derry City 1 at the Brandywell. Now we were very lucky near the end of the game. Derry, I think a lot of people say we played better. I think we had more possession. We just didn't do enough with the possession. We were struggling to break down the Derry midfield and the defence for the first half and probably the first 60 minutes, and then it started to change when Bradley brought on some substitutes. I'm going to talk about the whole game in a minute, but when Bradley brought on some substitutes, I think it changed the game. Graham Burke changed the game when he came on. It just shows he needs to be starting. I know I didn't put him in my match preview because I don't know how fit he is, but when he's fit, he needs to start. I know Dylan Watts was doing well, it just wasn't his day. So their goal, if you look at the goal, I wouldn't blame any of our players. It was a cross, let's be real, from Walter Figueroa. Lopez maybe could have got a better head on that. It was a bit too high for him, and Manis couldn't really see anything with Lopez in his way, and he wasn't expecting it to go in. He was expecting it to be a cross and getting ready for the header. So I wouldn't blame anyone. For our second goal, we'll give it to Dean Williams, the assist to Dean Williams. Great ball in, and great header off the post by Dean Williams, and just smacked off Horgan's face. Very unfortunate for Horgan. There was nothing he could do about it. If he wasn't there, it might not have went in, but he was trying to clear his lines, and it was very unfortunate with just smacking off his face. Now, our second goal, it was a great goal by Roberto Lopez. It wasn't a screamer, obviously, or it wasn't a great goal, but he was in the right place at the right time, and great ball in from Graham Burke and Roberto Lopez, as I said, in the right place. Puts it in 2-1. Maybe, I know we shouldn't be, people celebrated it a bit more than a win over Derry should be. It looked like we were going to lose for a lot of the game. I think Derry did very well. If they have a lot of positives leaving the game. A lot of positives Declan Devine would take out of that game. They were super. Now I'm going to review the full team, and starting in goal with Alan Manis, super performance by him. There was a great chance where he tipped it onto the bar, came back out, they headed it, and it was a super save off the line. You can tell why he's #1 keeper in the League of Ireland. Super keeper. I think any team would want him, even Dundalk with Gary Rogers in goal. Bowes, I don't know if they'd take him for a season, yeah. Maybe not long term. I wouldn't say they'd swap him for Talbot because Talbot's younger. But Alan Manis is super, and I think any team in the league, he'd fit into their team. And I think he had a great career in football, and hopefully he finishes it with Rovers, because I'd love to see him stay. Now, at left wing back, it was Danny Lafferty, who didn't play the full game. He came off later in the game, which I'll go over the substitutes after the starting 11. But I think Danny Lafferty didn't have the best game. He got into some good positions. It's just Derry, I think, were very good out on the wing, and he's a very good defensive player. Don't get me wrong, but I think pace-wise, he's not a speedy player that will get up and down the wing. I think we need to use our wing backs a bit more. I think when Sean Kavanagh gets back, there's no doubt he's going to get in the team. He's a very fast player. I think that's what we need at left wing back. I think Danny Lafferty could do a job at centre back if we needed him to. He's a left back, I think, not a left wing back. So I don't think it's great having him at left wing back. If you want to play a 5 at the back, I'd go with Neil Ferrugia or Sean Kavanagh, because Lafferty didn't really work at left wing back. I'd say Stephen Bradley was probably trying out something, and it didn't really work. But now at right wing back, it was Ronan Finn, who he didn't have a bad game. Not much players did have a bad game. It's just he could have been more involved in the game. I don't think he's a right wing back. He isn't a right wing back. He's just there to try to get him into the squad. He's a super captain. He's very hard to replace as a player. I just think he's getting a bit wasted out at right wing back, because he's a super player when he does play in midfield, and I think if you look at our squad now, it would be very unfortunate for any player to get dropped, which is why they have Ronan Finn at right wing back, because he's too good not to have in the squad. And I just think it's kind of wasted him there. And when we have Marshall on the bench as well, we should be using him a bit more. I think Marshall did come on and he did well. I'll talk about that in a little while. But when you have Marshall on the bench, you kind of need to put him in if the player that's playing in his position isn't a player who should be playing in the position that he's in. Now, as the first centre-back, Joey O'Brien, who had a good game. Him and Lafferty were connecting very well with their passing. So were the defenders, because we were finding it hard to break down the Derry midfield, as I said. And I think Lafferty and Joey O'Brien were doing very well. When I was talking about Lafferty, I didn't give him the credit about the passes, so I'm sorry about that. But he did do very well with the passes with Joey O'Brien and with Lopez and Grace as well. I think them two just stood out with their passes. Joey's a super player, very experienced player. He won't be playing football for at very top level, I wouldn't say, for any more years. A couple of years left, and I think we need to use him. I think that's why Bradley's playing him at centre-back instead of Scales, because Liam is going to play for the next couple of years, and Joey has his last few years now at Rovers, and he's a super player and we can't waste him. Now, beside him was Lee Grace, and he had a very good game. As I said, didn't do much wrong, as most players didn't do much wrong. Definitely wasn't that fault for the goal. I wouldn't say anyone was fault at the goal, for their goal. There was nothing anyone really could do about it, because we weren't expecting a shot. It wasn't a shot anyway, it was a cross. I think Pico could have done a bit better with his header, but you can't really blame him. Lee Grace, as I said, with the passing, he was very good, trying to break down the midfield. Just couldn't do it for the first half. And the second half, we did break them down. We had a couple of good chances. Now, besides Joey and Lee, was Roberto Lopez, who had a good game. One of the top players probably in the team. Definitely a candidate for man of the match. Scored a good goal in the right place at the right time. I went over that at the start of the video, and his passing as well was top class, trying to break down the midfield. So I think Pico is a super player, and when Finner's gone, I think him and Joey could be captains, because I don't think Finner's going to start the next game at right wing back. So maybe if he does play in midfield, he'll start, but if he doesn't, I can't really see him starting next. Now, as the first centre midfielder, he went with Gary O'Neill, who was definitely right to play him. He did very well in the game. His passing as well was good. He got into some good positions quite up the field. I think he played a lot different to the way he did against Finn Harps, which isn't bad. It's not really a bad thing. I think Bradley tried out a couple of different tactics, and they didn't really work. And at halftime, he kind of went back to the way we do play, and it worked. So fair play to Stephen Bradley. Gary O'Neill was very good with his partner Aaron McInnes in the midfield, who I'll talk about in a second. I think Gary O'Neill could be our future captain if he stays. If he goes to England, he could captain whoever he goes to, but I think if he stays for the next 5 years, he'll be our future captain. Now, beside O'Neill was Aaron McInnes, who is another man of the match candidate, I think. Had a very good game against his former side, Derry City. He didn't have as good of a game as I think I expected him to. I expected him to have a brilliant performance. Like the last time we went to the Brandywell, he scored a Panenka chip down the middle from the penalty spot. Super goal. One of the best goals I've seen him score in a Rovers shirt. I did expect a lot more from him. He was still very good. He was a good player, but I expected more from him, and it shows how much of a good player he is if he has a good game, and I expect more from him. Now, out on the left, Bradley went with Dylan Watts, which was, I think it was right. He had a very good game against Finn Harps. There was no reason not to play him. He didn't do too well against Derry. It wasn't his day. I think Greenberg will play next. I can't really see Dylan getting in the next game. He's a very good player, very underrated player. I think he'd fit into nearly any other team squad in Ireland. Maybe apart from Dundalk and Bows. He's a very underrated player. I just don't think he is going to play. Where he definitely won't play when Greg Bulger gets back. It depends on how he plays. Before, if Bulger was back tomorrow, I wouldn't see him starting. But since Greg Bulger's out for a long time, I can see Dylan getting in because he's a super player. Just wasn't his day. Now on the right midfield, Bradley went with Jack Byrne, who was definitely right. He could have had a better game. If you compared it to his performance against Finn Harps, I think you'd be disappointed with it. He had some good link-up play with some other players. Dylan Watts and him, they were great the last couple of games. Just weren't the same. They just weren't the same for the Derry game. I think I can see Jack Byrne going on to massive things in his career. In the Derry game, he had a couple of good passes, but I think he'd be disappointed with his performance. Now up front is Aaron Green, who had a good game, showed his work rate is super. Just he kept drifting out onto the left, which left us with no striker up top. He didn't play the full game. He did well when he did play. It's just I think he should be playing left wing, because there's no way our striker should be staying out on the left wing. If that's a tactic with Bradley, I think he should change it. And he did change Aaron Green playing. Maybe Aaron Green will play on the left next game instead of Dylan Watts, who didn't have a great game. Maybe that will happen. I don't know. I don't think it will happen. I think Greener will stay up front. I just hope that it changes and he stays up top because he's a very good player when he is in the right position. Now, the first substitution was Neil Ferrugia, who did very well when he came on. Didn't have an incredible amount of time. He had a second half. Came on at half time. I think if he gets a goal or an assist, his confidence is flying high, and I think we need to be playing him. And if he does well in training, that will also boost his confidence. Because he's a super player. I'd love if he scored because it would boost his confidence sky high, and he'd be doing really well. Now Greenberg also came on at half time with Neil Ferrugia, and he changed the game when he came on. If you were saying the second half who was the man of the match, it would be him. Fortunately, it wasn't the man of the match for the second half. There is none of that. But it would be him because he changed the game when he came on. The ball into Roberto Lopez, great ball. Had some great passes when he came on. And he fully deserves all the talk he gets. We're so lucky to have him. Now in the 63rd minute, Rory Gaffney came on. And it was for Joey O'Brien, Joey O'Brien was a centre-back for that game. I already went over him. Which was a striker coming on for a defender, which was great. He didn't do too well when he came on. Didn't have much to do. He was all right. It wasn't an incredible performance, but it wasn't an awful performance either. Now, in the 67th minute, Dean Williams replaced Aaron Green, it was a great decision by Stephen Bradley, because Dean Williams was more central. He stayed up top in the centre, and Aaron Green, he was up top, but he drifted out too much onto the left, which is, I don't know if it's a bad thing. For me, I wouldn't do it. I'd keep him at centre. And that's what Dean Williams did. He got, we'll call it the assist for the first goal. He headed it off the post and hit off Horgan and went in. So we'll give him the assist for that. Not much Horgan can do about it. He's such a super young player. He had 7 goals out of 5 games in the friendlies. He's going to go on to big things in his career, I'll tell you that. Now, in the 75th minute, Reece Marshall replaced Ronan Finn, which was a great decision, as Marshall did very well. He contributed well to the second goal. Marshall, I think, will start the next game. I can see Stephen Bradley putting him in. It does depend now how he is doing in training. And if he's bringing him on, he must be doing well in training. And I hope he is. He's a smashing player. Now, the Air Sports man of the match was Owen Toll, the centre-back for Derry City, which he had a cracking game, was a very good player, very tall player. Won the ball nearly every single time. My man of the match would be Alan Manis, was super. That save he did off that line, if that wasn't, I think without Alamanis, if we had, no disrespect to Leon Pauls, there's a big level between him and Leon Pauls. Pauls is a very good player, and he's been playing with the Rovers too, and he's been doing well for them, but there's a massive difference between them. If that was any other goalkeeper in the league, that would have been 2-2, and even could be 3-2 in the game. So, man of the match, Alamanis. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Please let me know what you thought about the game, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.